Okay, tonight we're going to work on the roofs a little bit. We're going to get some rust on the roofs. This is accomplished with just using just straight oil paint, not thinned. A few tools. One, a very stiff brush. And I guess I call it a stippling brush. This one here has a smaller end and a little bit larger end, which is nice because you can kind of switch back and forth as you need to. We're going to use a cosmetic sponge. And you can see on the ends how I've just kind of picked away and kind of made it rough. You don't want it flat, you kind of want it rough, so just pick a little bit off at a time until you get a rough surface. The colors we're going to use tonight is going to be a raw sienna, the burnt sienna, and a burnt umber for the three basic colors. Now, depending on how dark you want it, you use the darker colors. If it's a fresher rust, you want to start with this. What we're going to do tonight, we're going to start with the raw sienna first. As you can see on this car, this was a silver one, put the black oil on there, darkened it down, and then I went back through and I put the three colors of rust on there. Now, it's a little dark, it's kind of hard to define. We'll try to bring this back a little bit later on. We'll use some pastel chalks, just straight artist pastel chalks. Mix it up, brush it on there, and see if I can get the color back a little bit. We're not going to get this one quite as dirty. It's a little bit cleaner car, so we're going to lighten it up and kind of get some more well-defined areas with the rust on this one here. Put my piece of glass palette down. Bring out just a little bit of this. Doesn't take much. We'll put on the burnt sienna. And a dab of burnt umber. Again, a little bit of this goes a long way with the roof. First thing we'll do is start with this car. I'll use my stippling brush, use the small end, and we'll start with the raw sienna first. You always want to start with your lighter color first. Get a little bit worked onto your brush, kind of figure a pattern you want. We'll start right here. Now this isn't showing up very good, but with all three colors blended in a little bit, you'll kind of see that what's left over will kind of help show three different layers, and it'll vary the paint, vary the color a little bit. Now the raw sienna, you want to get a wider pattern to it. Just gently stipple it on. Here we'll leave some lighter areas that's been untouched by rust. I'll work that around. Okay. If you want to, you can always get a piece of paper and get the worst of this wiped off before moving to the next. We're going to use the burnt sienna, the lighter of the two browns. Again, get a little bit on your brush. Start in the middle. And kind of work these two together. Blend the paint right in with each other. But don't go quite as far to the outside as what you did with the raw sienna. Vary the pattern a little bit. Okay, you can kind of see your pattern emerging. I'm going to wipe my brush off a little bit. Now we're going to go after the darker stuff. This you want to use a little bit more sparingly. One guy refers to it, you're adding the pain, and the pain is always closer to the center of the rust patch. Not going to have a lot of cancer on this. We'll just keep it kind of light. Let's go back. I'm going to add some more of the raw sienna here. No, excuse me, the burnt umber. Kind of extend this a little bit. Come down. Go back and get some darker brown. Let's get this pretty heavy right here on the point. Like so. If you get too heavy with it, you can always go back with a rag and paint thinner and wipe this off and take it off, and you can always start over again. And as always, before I started this, the ceiling or the roof of the car has been covered again with a good healthy coat of dull coat. So you've got a little bit of protection there. You can go back and re-wipe stuff off if you need to without damaging the previous coat. Okay, now with your stippling done, as you can see, it looks a little rough in there. You can kind of see your stippling marks. What we're going to do now is soften this down, and that's where these sponges come in handy. Literally just tab and pad this into place. Turn your sponge a little bit each time. Don't smear it, just dab it, turn it, dab it, turn it. And what that does is it kind of softens up the colors a little bit. So, or not the colors, it softens up the edges. You don't like something, you can always go back and retouch this. Put a little bit some light over here where it bled through a little bit darker. Darker brown here. It got muted out a little bit. Always start with a small amount. You can always go back and add more if you need to. Not too bad. And we'll go back in a little bit when this dries a little bit so it sets up. I'll go back and we'll dig out the pastel chalks and we'll try to bring out some a little bit lighter color to it. We'll set that aside to dry for a little bit. Going after the rust with chalk, I usually grab the orange and I'll grab the brown. Grabbing a knife, you just lightly scrape some powders into a couple different jars, trays. I use a brush similar to this, or you can use a smaller one. It's been worn, but it's basically a flat square brush. Mix the two together. Okay, a nice rusty color. We'll go back to the original car here. And as you can see, it doesn't take a whole lot. And I'm doing the same thing, I'm just kind of patting it into place. Now this paint here happens to be dry by a couple of days, but it'll still stick to it. Now that lightened it up a little bit, kind of muted it. If you don't like it, you can take a larger brush that's soft, a blending brush, and just kind of whisk away at it. And that lightened it up somewhat, kind of give it a more defined, lighter rust color. Doing the same with this, with the fresh paint. It's set for a few seconds. Really no rhyme or reason to it. You can just brush on a little bit, and we'll call that one done. Okay. I have went back with this car using the same oil paints, the burnt umber and the burnt sienna, and I've added in little patches of rust here and there. And what I've used was this little brush, or I've used the stippling brush. These little brushes are kind of handy. I haven't used a whole lot of them. What I have used I do like, and what they are the micro brushes. You've got three different sizes here. You've got the regular green, a fine yellow, and a super fine white. The green works pretty good for this, the green and the yellows. Again, it's the same process as what we did on the roof. As you can see, going back to what the paint that we had left over after brushing it off with a Q-tip, you want to extend the fact now, so take a little bit in your brush, doesn't take much, and come back in here and you just start patting it in. As before, you start with the lighter colors, but this time I did not use the raw sienna. I went right for the burnt sienna, and now I'm going to wind up using the raw sienna. Get a little bit on your brush. You don't want a lot. And you just pat on a little bit. And we'll go back and hit this with weathering powders when we're done. Again, try to keep a darker brown to the middle of what you've done before. Add in a little bit there. Back with your stippling brush. This will kind of help soften the edges up a little bit. Kind of help hide the brush marks. I think we'll call that good. I don't want to get this too bad. I've almost got it too heavy. And you can work it out. If it does get a little touch heavy there, you can kind of work it back. And you can also see how that kind of feathers that, so it isn't so dark. Again, that's what's nice about the oils. If you get a little too heavy, you can go in here and work it off. There we go. Use your Q-tip, similar to the way we use the cosmetic sponge. You just dab and pat. Okay, and we'll call that one good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some rust streaks, some scrapes, and some Mars to it. And what I use for this is just the cheap old craft paint. This happens to be burnt umber again. It's a dark brown. Get it shook up. Put a little dab right there. Doesn't take much. I use a real fine brush for this next trick. Some guys will use a toothpick. Other guys have used a paper clip that's been straightened out, but this seems to work pretty good as well. And all you do, get just a little bit on your brush. You don't need a lot. And we're going to put some scrapes on here. Since your door travels this way, you're going to have scrapes. Just light little scrapes. Now I'm using acrylic on this one as opposed to oil, but you're not doing anything other than just applying it. Doesn't take much, just a little bit. Get my cheaters on here. Pick up a little bit more paint, and we're going to do some on this side. Put some on the ribs. Anything hanging out from the roadside or the side of the tracks, we'll catch this and scrape it. And don't worry about it. You can put on just whatever direction. You don't need to have it perfectly horizontal. Just little dabs here and there. And all you're doing is adding just a few bumps and scrapes to it. And I think we'll call that wonderful.